able to come here tonight? Okay. All right, good.
Ian and Andrea said, don't we go last week, it's time you come back tonight.
All right. Welcome to those of you who are watching online. We are streaming on YouTube and Facebook, it looks like. So, anyways, good to have y'all in there with us. Birthdays, we only have one in the church that I'm aware of. Chris Gene Cake. Sometimes Chris comes in late just because he's been at work. So, what now?
He'll walk in later.
Yeah. Because he does the work thing. So, anyway, wish him happy birthday. Any other birthdays that y'all know of? None? Okay. Well, I've got a couple. Okay, so as far as birthdays and deaths, not a whole lot. But well, I don't know. So the birthdays, I don't have any what you might call A-listers, but I've got some B-listers that might be interesting. So who shares a birthday with Chris Gene Cake? Who is bragging because they have the same birthday as Chris Gene Cake? That's the question. Well, got a few. Let's see how many I got. I got 7. But again, people but they may not be just like world famous. First, in 1829, happy birthday to William Booth. You know who William Booth is? Yes, he was an English preacher and founder of the Salvation Army. He was born in Nottingham, England. Died in 1912. So if he died in 1912, he was just a young guy. No. My math was wrong. I was looking at a different date. That would confuse me for a second. Okay, because I remember seeing his picture. I'm like, yeah, he didn't look that young. Also on this date in 1847, Joseph Pulitzer. He was a publisher. Pulitzer Prize named after him. But he was born in Hungary. Died in 1911. 1915, Harry Morgan. Y'all know who Harry Morgan is? MASH, yes, right. MASH and Dragnet. He was in Dragnet as well. So anyway, he was born in Detroit. He died in 2011. Chuck Connors was born on this date in 1921. The Rifleman. Y'all remember the Rifleman? Yeah, you old timers. I know y'all would. So there are several birthdays. There were several birthdays that I wanted to bring up, but I thought, no, nobody in there will care about those. But I figure y'all would like that one. But did you know he was also a professional basketball and a professional baseball player? Yeah. So, which, he was a tall guy, so it's not really a surprise, but I did not know that. But he was born on this date in 1921 in Brooklyn, New York. He died in 1992. 1936, happy birthday to John Madden. Great coach, great commentator. He was great to listen to. Then, of course, they made the whole series of football video games after John Madden. But he was born on this date in Austin, Minnesota. Died in 2021. 1984, happy birthday to Zoe. Zoe happens to be the first frozen embryo child. So, yeah, 1984, born in Melbourne, Australia. And then 1988, Haley Joel Osment. Y'all know who that is? One of the most famous lines in all of movies. I see dead people. Yep. Born on this date in 1988, born in Los Angeles. Only got one death to mention on this date in 1585. Gregory the 13th died. Why would I bring his name up? Anybody got any ideas? Gregory, he's the one who introduced the Gregorian calendar, the calendar that we follow to this day, and which kind of messed up some folks back then, but it caught on eventually. But he introduced it in 1582, which was only 3 years before he died. But he died at age 83. But a few interesting things that happened. I did want to bring up in 1815, although this would not have made the cut, had our Bible study not taken this turn last week. But I just thought that was interesting that on this date in 1815 was the eruption of Mount Tambora in the East Indies, and it was the most powerful eruption in history. and it killed 71,000 people and caused what they call a global volcanic winter. And remember, we talked about that last week with the earthquakes and the moving of the tectonic plates and then the setting off of volcanoes and spewing ash and dust and lava all up in the sky and all those kind of things. That's really what you see playing out in Seal 6, the judgment of Seal 6. So, and if you weren't here for that study, and you're not familiar with what we were talking about, it's archived. Just look at Facebook, YouTube, website, all that stuff. And you can read about or hear about the sixth seal and all the terrible things that took place there. But anyway, so I just thought that was interesting. This date in 1825, the first hotel in Hawaii opens. And now they got tons of them, you know. Not that I've ever been there, but, you know. 1849, the safety pin was patented by Walter Hunt. And he sold the rights to that patent for $400. Yeah, crazy, huh? But that reminds me, Robert Kraft, who I know he owned the New England Patriots for the longest time. I guess he still does. I don't know. But he passed on the patent for Velcro. So that was one business decision he didn't do too well at. But anyway, 1865 on this date, Robert E. Lee gives his farewell address at Appomattox. 1869, Congress increased the Supreme Court from 7 justices to 9, to our current 9. So it's been that same number for a long time. 1912. Anybody know what happened famous in 1912? What? The war. Well, yes. The Titanic sets off on this date in 1912. Glenn, you'll appreciate this. In 1916, the PGA was founded in New York City, Professional Golfers Association. 1947, Jackie Robinson becomes the first black player to sign a Major League Baseball contract on this date. 1970, for those of y'all who were around back then and you like this kind of music, maybe you'd be sad to remember it was on this date in 1970 that Paul McCartney officially announces the split of the Beatles. I don't care, but whatever. And then a date which will go down in infamy for all Georgia fans. 1988 on this date, Herschel Walker performs for the Fort Worth Ballet. I will leave that there because it wouldn't be politically correct for me to say what is on my mind. So, anyway. All right. So there you have it. That is what happened on this date. I did not pull this up on my computer. I hope everything is working well. I hadn't even looked at I don't have any comments. Usually when something's going wrong, especially if it has to do with the sound, somebody is flagging me down saying, "Oh, we can't hear," but I don't have any of those messages, which it happens because I forget to turn stuff on. Happy birthday! Birthday boy is in the house. Yep. So we've already talked about you. So okay. I'm just a wee bit concerned. Where is it? Okay, I wonder if anybody has this on, because it's not showing up on my Facebook or on the churches that we're up and running. That's a little disconcerting. I just want to make sure that we're good before we get too far. Hold on, let's see. Yeah, there we are. We're live. Okay. Yep, we're live. We got some people watching. Good to know. All right. Whew. Concerned. Because, hey, y'all don't want to miss out on what happened on this date. Like, you don't want to miss out that this was Chris's birthday and Chris is here in the room with us. All right. Revelation chapter 7. Revelation chapter 7. We're going to take a little small turn here. Not because we're chasing rabbits like we oftentimes do, but I will say that so far in our study, which we began when did we start this? September, October, something like that. What? Is that all right? Oh. Okay, y'all looking at me like I got three eyes. What?
It's been that long.
It doesn't feel like it's been that long? Oh, well, that's good to know, because I thought it feels like 3 years. That would be bad. But I have chased rabbits, but I haven't chased a rabbit that I didn't feel like was worth our time to chase. So, like, even looking back. I mean, sometimes it feels right in the... What now?
I said, I've chased a rabbit.
Okay. Well, good.
And she dove
Was-
into the furniture where I couldn't get her.
Oh, yeah, that was back in the day. You've already told us. Yeah, you told us that story before. So somebody got mad at you, I do believe. But there have been times where I've chased rabbits, and then afterwards I'm like, why did I even talk about that? But I don't feel bad about anything that we've talked about so far. I think it's all been pertinent. So today, it's almost like the Apostle John, he's not going to chase a rabbit. He's going to give us a break. Because so far what we've done, what has happened from chapter 4 through chapter 6, does anybody, hey, bonus points, does anybody remember where is the outline for the book of Revelation?
Revelation 1 somewhere.
Yeah, okay, hey, Revelation chapter 1, I am so excited that you remember that it's in there. I feel pretty good. I mean, even if you don't mention the exact verse, I feel good that you've said that. So it's Revelation chapter 1 and verse 19. Therefore, write the things which you have seen. That's chapter 1. And from John's vantage point, he says the things which are. From John's vantage point, that's chapters 2 and 3 when he's writing to the churches. And then the things which will take place after these things. That is future events. That's chapter 4 through the end of the book. And once we begin to analyze chapter 4, all these things, we're now going to have a chronological story. So that, and when we think of it that way, the reason I bring that up is because when we think of it that way, it takes a little bit of the confusion factor away from our study. Because as you know, people look at the book of Revelation and they're like, what you talking about? I don't want to talk about that because I don't understand it, blah, blah, blah. But if we look at it as it's an unfolding story of future events, I think that helps us a little bit. It helps us at least construct it a little bit better. Well, chapters 4 and 5, huge worship service that takes place prior to the pouring out of God's judgment upon the earth. Chapter 6 is the beginning of the story of the tribulation with the 7 seals being broken. Now, the 7 seals, and somebody brought it up last week, it's not animals. We're not talking about seals, the animals. That's a good question. We're talking about seals that bound a book together. It was rolled up and sealed together and sealed with 7 seals. But when those 7 seals are broken, as each one of them are broken, for you English majors, when each of those is broken, it's not going to tell a story. It's going to give it in picture form. It's like a movie that's going to unfold in front of us. Now, so that we have the 6 seals we've looked at in chapter 6. We've looked at the 6 seals and the judgment that was unleashed with the breaking of each one of those seals. So that's kind of it's a very general summary of our study thus far. Somebody says, well, why couldn't you just say that from the beginning? It saved us a lot of trouble. But anyway, because y'all didn't ask for it. Remember, y'all wanted detail, so I'm giving you detail. And by the way, Candace, I forgot. I was going to ask you, I can't believe I forgot. I was going to ask you to get a clip of the Tonight Show from last night. The Tonight Show with Jimmy Fallon, in his monologue, stand-up monologue, he actually referenced the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse.
Really?
Yes. Now, he didn't say it exactly like that. He was talking about the eclipse and made a joke about that or something, and then said something about And then right outside, there are four horses that are walking through, or something along those lines. But he was making a reference to the book of Revelation, and I was sitting there thinking, I wonder how many people have any clue as to what he's talking about. Now, some do, because, in wrestling you had the four horsemen or whatever, and it was based on that, and there have been movies made about that and that kind of stuff. But I just thought that it was kind of clever, and it took a little bit of knowledge of what Revelation chapter 6 is talking about. So anyway, we've looked at the four horsemen, and they're unfolding. We looked at the fifth; those were the first four seals. The fifth seal is martyrdom; those who are dying for the name of Christ during the tribulation and calling out for vengeance. And then the sixth is it is a horrible unfolding of earthquakes and all the outcome of earthquakes and the fear that the mightiest men on planet Earth are saying, hide us, kill us, we don't want to face God. And so for the first five seals, and remember the first five seals are those take up a span of 3 years, the first half of the tribulation, 3.5 years. Those things are explained away. This is man not getting along. That's why you have war, and then you have the outcome of war, which is famine and pestilence and death and blah, blah, blah. And then of course, all the martyrs, those are the horrible acts of the Antichrist. But when you get to seal 6, and that is broken, and all the terrible things are going to take place, nobody then can deny it anymore, because all the people who have rebelled against God say, hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne. We recognize now, or are finally forced to admit, that this could not happen by anybody other than God. And we don't want any part of that. This is the worst that could happen. So, and all of a sudden, we get to that point, and we come to a screeching halt when we get to chapter 7. So, all that to say that everything that we've looked at to this point is a chronological unfolding of the history of the tribulation. But now we're going to get to chapter 7, and he's going to take a turn. It's going to be different. In fact, I really like, in my study Bible, I don't know what you have in your study Bible. If you got it on your phone, there's nothing wrong with that or anything, but they probably don't have as many notes on there that are easy to see, because, it's a little small tablet, that size. But chapter 7, at the top of mine, it says an interlude. Does anybody else, does yours say that? Okay. So basically, we're going to stop and take a breath. We're going to have, and it's going to happen again after the 6th trumpet judgment. So it's a pattern, okay? It's an intentional pattern. And it's almost like, whew, let's just stop here for a second and absorb all that we've read and all that we've seen, because this is a lot to take in. And if you haven't felt that, it's only because I haven't done a good job of explaining it. Because if you absorb what he's talked about so far, you need a break. This is a lot to take in. It's also, in a sense, and we'll see several of these in the book of Revelation, it's almost like a meanwhile back at the ranch. Now, the good thing is that modern day cinema has prepared our minds for this. I don't know that it did a good job, that cinema did that good of a job at this, 50, 70 years ago. But now it does. And that is you're following along a story, and then all of a sudden it breaks away from what's going on over here, and it says, at the same time, this is going on over here. And it kind of travels back and forth. It might be traveling back in time. It might be traveling back and forth in space. But it's going back and forth to tell two different stories that are unfolding at the same time. And that's kind of what is happening right here. While this stuff is going on in chapter 6, there's also something going on in chapter 7 at the same time. And so it's going to serve that. It's like another way to say it, if you're into literature, it's a parenthetical chapter. It's a parenthesis. Meanwhile, back at the ranch, here's what's going on. And so There are a few reasons for that. Number one, it is for the reader, for us, to catch our breath. Because this is kind of breathtaking, and it's a chance for us to catch our breath. A second reason, it's a reminder of God's mercy even in the greatest of his wrath, the greatest outpouring of his wrath. And it follows the pattern of God, because every instance that we see God punishing and his wrath being poured out, you also see a bit of God's grace. Like, yes?
Question that popped up in my mind, could that break be a chance to put, all right, y'all see what's going on, have you changed your minds yet? Are you ready to come to me? Could that have been, took a break? Like you said, God's mercy and grace, like, y'all, here's a chance.
Okay, so first of all, yes, I mean that's certainly possible. But this is really more for the reader than it is the unfolding of the events of the tribulation, if that makes sense.
Yes.
It's like what John is seeing, he's taking a break from, but that doesn't mean that there is going to be a break in the events once they begin happening.
Oh, okay.
But even still, for someone who is reading, when they begin to process what's going on, certainly that's a chance for them to evaluate, am I ready for this kind of thing? So, I mean, I can certainly see where that would be part of it. But like, you go back to the very first punishment of God, which was kicking Adam and Eve out of the garden. Even in the midst of that, how did they get clothes? God gave them, God provided them the skins for it. It was ready-made. I mean, it's like they got to walk into Belk and walk out for free, because that's, God has mercy in the midst of his wrath. And so even the greatest, and let me tell you something, there ain't nothing that God has done yet that's going to even come close to what he's doing here. And so even in the midst of that, we're going to see his mercy being expressed. And then you have I guess, two things that kind of go hand in hand. If you look and see where chapter 6 ends, chapter 6 ends with these mighty men, the manly men of the earth, the people who led them to this point of needing, of deserving of all this wrath. He says, they say, fall on us, hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne and from the wrath of the Lamb. Now listen to this, verse 17. For the great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? Chapter 7 is going to answer that question. That's why it's a great time to stop, okay? Obviously, to take a breath. But he's going to answer the question, who's able to stand? These people in chapter 7, that's who. And so, I guess the fourth purpose of this, the third is to answer the question. The fourth goes right along with that, and that is to contrast the fate of believers and unbelievers. Chapter 6 and chapter 8, that's the fate of unbelievers. Chapter 7 is the fate of believers. Okay? So, let's see. I've talked a long time. It's what I do. You should know that by now. But again, I don't think I chased a rabbit that I didn't mean to chase. So, anyway. So, let's just jump in chapter 7, verse 1. He says, after this I saw. So, what that indicates, and we're going to see it again in verse 9 when he says after these things, it's a new vision that he is getting. So far he envisioned chapters 4 and 5, the worship services. Chapter 6, he's envisioning the unfolding of the events of the tribulation. And again, as we said just a moment ago, it's not necessarily a break in the events of the future, but it's a break in his vision. It's a break in him seeing what's taking place. And so he's getting a new vision right here. And here's what that vision is. It's 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth. Now, here's the fun part about this. Because I think we might only get through verse 3 today. since I've talked a lot. But people who have enjoyed the task of saying that the Bible is not inerrant. That makes sense? Which is not me. The Bible has never been wrong because God can't be wrong. I mean, it's impossible. That's something that God cannot do. He cannot be wrong. And so his word is always right. But people like to look at this and be like, this is based on an ancient belief in what? A flat earth. Yes. And so that's the only place that four corners could come from. Which actually, if you are, is it a geophysicist that studies this? That studies the earth? There actually is, because we're not perfectly round, there actually is something that they call four corners. That's beyond my understanding, and so I'm not going to even try to debate that. But the four corners isn't talking specifically about corners like what you have right here. It's talking about the 4 points of a compass, north, south, east, and west. In other words, from all around. So there are four angels. They're standing at the four corners of the earth. They're surrounding the earth. They're encompassing the earth. And they're holding back the four winds of the earth. So, and this holding back, that word in Greek is an indication that there is this struggle to break free. So the winds that are going to blow in the judgment of God are, and again, what would you, on the one hand, it's symbolic language. On the other, it's very literal, but we'll talk about that in a second. So there's this push to do the bidding of God, which is to break through and bring the judgment that is supposed to be happening during the tribulation. That's kind of how he senses what is going on. This movement to bring judgment. But the angels are holding that back for a moment because we're going to see that they're told to. But it's also very literal in that there is no wind to blow on the earth or the sea or any tree or on any tree. So, again, I'm not sure where this is taking place chronologically in chapter 6. It may be, maybe it's between the 6th and the 7th seal. Maybe it's after all the chaos of the earthquake and the volcanoes and the spewing down of lava onto people and all the crazy stuff that's going on and the moving the tectonic plate, all that crazy stuff. Maybe it's after that and everything just gets really quiet. Or maybe it's sometime before then. We don't really know. But everything is going to go quiet for a minute. Again, let's go to cinema for just a second. So, I don't have a great example in mind that I could point you to. And even if I did, you would have to have seen it and know the exact segment, the exact point in the movie where I would be thinking. But if you watch a movie that it might be a superhero movie or it might be one about warfare, something like that, modern. Here's what happens. There's a lot of fighting or whatever, a lot of build-up and a lot of intensity that's going on. And then somebody shoots off a rocket or somebody shoots off a missile or a bomb or whatever. And in modern day cinema, for a split second, everything goes quiet. There's no sound at all. And then there's the huge explosion. And when I say a fraction of a second, I literally mean that. It's not a second, or else that'd be weird. But just for a fraction of a second, everything goes quiet. And then all of a sudden it gets even more intense than it was before. That's what's happening. Everything's going to go quiet, eerily quiet. Especially with all the chaos that's been going on with the first six seal judgments, or even if it's in the middle of those 6 seal judgments, even if it's just war. There's going to be nothing. There'll be no waves. Kind of like at St. Simon's. I was at St. Simon's on Monday. I'm looking out. I'm like, there's like no movement out here. It's so weird. But so it's going to be nothing, no wind. And so in a sense, it is figurative because there's this bursting forth, this eagerness to do the judgment of God, and yet at the same time, it's literal in that there's going to be nothing going on for a moment. And he says, and I saw another angel. And by the way, some people would say this is Jesus. It's not, okay? Because that word another means literally another of the same kind. So it's nothing worth splitting hairs over. If somebody wants to believe it's Jesus or whatever, blah, blah, blah. But it's not. It's not. This because it literally means another of the same kind, another angel of the status of angel that we see in verse 1. So there's another angel. He ascends from the rising of the sun. Now, I don't know how well you know geography. We'll just throw this out there for fun. From John's vantage point, when he is writing this, where is the rising of the sun? East? It's Israel. He's on the island of Patmos in the Mediterranean Sea. And to his east is going to be Israel. And so, ascending from Israel, having the sea of the living God, he cried out with a loud voice to the 4 angels to whom it was granted to harm the earth and the sea, saying, do not harm the earth or the sea or the trees until we have sealed the bondservants of our God on their foreheads. Now, you might could write this down somewhere. You don't have to turn to it. Ezekiel chapter 9. This probably helped frame John's vision. Ezekiel chapter 9, verses 3 through 6. Says, then the glory of the Lord of the God of Israel went up from the cherub, the angel on which it had been, to the threshold of the temple, and he called to the man clothed in linen, at whose loins was the writing case. The Lord said to him, go through the midst of the city, even through the midst of Jerusalem, and put a mark on the foreheads of the men who sigh and groan over all the abominations which are being committed in its midst. But to the others he said in my hearing, go through the city after him and strike. Do not let your eye have pity, and do not spare. Utterly slay. Now, this is real language. And this is God. Remember, the sweet grandfather up in the sky. Utterly slay old men, young men, maidens, little children, and women. But do not touch any man on whom is the mark. And you shall start from my sanctuary. So they started with the elders who were before the temple. Boom. So you got the same thing. This is framing. And by the way, it had an immediate fulfillment, but its ultimate fulfillment will be here. So God says, we're going to put a mark on them. Don't touch them. Don't mess with them. Do not hurt them. Now, we don't know exactly what that means, to be honest. But let me point something out to you that people are surprised about. When you hear mark on the forehead, what do you think? The mark of the beast. That is what people usually think of, especially when you're talking about the book of Revelation. However, understand, everybody will have a mark. They all will. They'll either have the mark of God, or they'll have the mark of the beast. It will be very plain where people stand. Okay? So, but to be honest, I say we. I don't know about we. Maybe somebody's got this figured out. I don't. I don't know what it means that they will not be harmed, because they will be living through the tribulation period. It will probably be somewhat like when Israel was in slavery in Egypt and the 10 plagues came down. Certainly they were not the target of those plagues, but they had to be in some form or fashion affected by those plagues, if that makes sense. Again, I can't pretend to know exactly how they were affected, but they had to be, The death angel didn't touch them, for sure, but when the plagues, when the locusts came through and there was darkness and the water was turned to blood and all these kind of strange things happening, it affected them. but they weren't the target of it. So, and there will be martyrs in that day as well, in the time of the tribulation. So we don't really know exactly what this means. There have been a lot of guesses that have been thrown out there. I can tell you what they are, but I couldn't give you any definitive answer as to what this actually means. I just know that God is going to give them some measure of protection from the horrible things that are going on around them. We do know that. Okay? So, and I heard the number of those who were sealed, 144,000 sealed from every tribe of the sons of Israel. 144,000. Who are they? Anybody got any guesses? What now?
12,000 from each tribe.
12,000 from each tribe? What does that mean? Like, there are all kind of difficulties with this. So let me just throw out the difficulties, and maybe I'll just leave y'all hanging for a week. That'll be fun. That'll be fun, because we're getting to that point. So let's start with something that well, I'll let you decide if it's wrong. The Jehovah's Witnesses said that that's how many people would be saved. Period. 144,000. If you're until you get this far into their history, and they're like, how can we limit this to 144,000 and us still be able to get in? You know, how are we going to do that? Who are we going to kick out so that I can get in? So they had to reinterpret what they meant by that. But there are, and just admittedly, there are complications with this. Here are a few of those complications. Number one is just the naming of the 12 tribes. So the first name that you have is the tribe of Judah. Why would that be a problem? Why could that be perceived as a problem? Anybody know? We're talking about the Jewish people. Who was the oldest son of Abraham? It wasn't Judah.
Abraham?
Who's the oldest son, of Jacob, I'm sorry. Yes. Yeah. Who's the oldest son? We got to go back a ways. No. Who's Jacob's oldest son?
Reuben.
It was Reuben, exactly. And in a Jewish mind, Reuben would always be named first. And yet, he's named second. Now, that one could be explained away fairly easily. How? This is fun, just asking y'all questions and having y'all look at me like y'all are mad at me now.
Yeah, that's like a biblical trivia.
Yes, that's exactly, yes. So why would Judah be named, why could it be explained away that Judah would be named first?
Were they the spiritual religious leaders?
That would have been the Levites,
Okay.
which is going to pose another problem in just a second. Jesus was of the tribe of Judah. Makes sense. However, then you have some other problems. Dan is not mentioned at all in this list. Why wouldn't he be mentioned? Not only that, but Levi is mentioned, and Levi is never mentioned in the tribes because the Levites were the priests. That's why they didn't have their own land. If you ever look at a map of the 12 tribes and where they're located, you won't find Levi because they didn't have their own land. They were the priestly lineage. So that's a problem. And then you have Joseph. Joseph is never mentioned anywhere else. Among the Jews, Joseph, the tribe of Joseph, you don't have that. You have Ephraim and Manasseh. And let's see, which one? I think it mentions, which one is it? Oh, no, I can't. Okay, and it mentions Manasseh, but not Ephraim. Why is that? It's almost like it wasn't a staunch Jew that wrote these things down. It's like, who are they talking about here? And there are people who say it's really not talking. It's talking about those who are Jewish spiritually. And who did Paul say was Jewish spiritually? Us. those who are of the faith are true descendants of Abraham, is what he says. So some people are saying it's really just talking about the church. But there's no indication here that that's what he's talking about. Not only that, but because of the diaspora and all these years of history, the Jews, like to this day, they don't really recognize tribes because there is no way for them to trace their lineage back to any of these tribes. They can't do that. Ancestry.com can't do that, you know? It can mess up a lot of lives from what I hear, but it can't tell you what tribe you're from. This is just all kind of difficulties to know who it is that they're talking about. And with that, I will leave you hanging. And I will tell you next week what I think. But your assignment between now and then, and if you're watching online, this is your assignment, look it up. Just look it up. And see what you see. See what you read. See what makes sense to you. And that is where we will pick up next week. Remind me that I'm ending with a question, because I don't normally end with a question. So don't let me just like go on and start ranting and raving. I will try to remember to start off, and we can at least address the question. But I'm just telling you, there are a lot of people who are a whole lot smarter than I am that coming up with different answers. So. Okay, got a few requests here this evening, and they all surround deaths that are connected to our church. First of all, Charles and Rayanne Presley, their grandson, passed away. When was that he died? It was Oh, 2 days ago? Really?
I think so.
I was thinking it was sooner. Okay, yeah, because you told me while I was out of town. Bonnie Harrison has passed away, and they are not going to have a service here in our area. It's North Carolina. Is that where they're taking her? Maryland. Okay, MD. Yeah, okay. So, son's name is Tom. So pray for the family there. She's always a sweet lady. And I remember even. I went to go see her several months back, and even after not being here for a long time, she still knew who I was. So she's always very sweet. And then Barbara Page passed away. I believe that was Sunday morning at about 3, something like that. And her husband's name is Otis. And those funeral arrangements, that service is going to be here on Monday. Visitation at 10, service at 11. And so yeah, we're working on all that. Okay, any other prayer requests? Oh, by the way, if you're watching online, I forgot to mention this. Go ahead and begin to put your prayer requests there in the comment section, and we'll mention those before we leave here. What requests y'all have in the room?
Just continue to keep Elizabeth in your prayers.
All right, let's pray for Liz. It's good to see her here. When was that? Was that the week before Easter? It was before that, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was probably back towards the beginning of March.
Okay. Yes. All right. What else you got? Any others? None? None have come online. So we shall pray. Now, if you're still writing online, go ahead and do that, because we got people who come and watch these videos a little bit later on. And if you're watching one of the videos later on, then pray over the ones that you see come up in the comment section. All right? Okay. What now?
Continue to pray for Alicia.
All right. Let's pray for Alicia Powell. Cancer. Okay. Let's pray. God, we do thank you for your mercy and how it's demonstrated in so many different ways. And God, how your goodness is never extinguished. And the grace that you give for people to come to know you, and the way of escape from some of the terrible things that are certain to happen. You give us that out, and you give us that deliverance if we will just place our faith in you. And so, of course, I guess we think about Wednesday night and people following along on Wednesday night. our assumption is that everybody must be saved. I mean, it's just kind of what we do on Wednesday night. But I pray that we wouldn't take that for granted, but we would look within our hearts and make sure that we are prepared and that we are shielded from this day by none other than Jesus, who is the only one who can save us from it. God, you've heard the request that we have, and that, gosh, all these deaths that are right here close together. We thank you that there is more to this life, and that we have a reason for hope, and that you bring mercy and grace and comfort in times like this. And so we pray that would be felt in the lives of these who are left behind. And then the other requests that we didn't mention for whatever reason, we entrust them to you as well. As we go our separate ways for the rest of this week, prepare us for divine encounters, divine appointments that we have. Even if we don't see it, I pray that our walk with you is close enough that you are using us in the midst of those. So, God, we love you, and we thank you for all that you've done for us. In Jesus' name, amen. All right. Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for watching online.